A lot of what Putin does is a bluff, but what is definitely not a bluff is him going as far as killing innocent children, women, civilians all across Ukraine, and not minding whether he's hitting military targets or he's hitting civilian targets. And it seems that the civilian objects like the infrastructure, power infrastructure, civilian infrastructure like hospitals, schools, kindergartens, that seems to be the main targets of Putin's army today.
Russia has carried out an extensive aerial attack on Ukraine with more than 100 missiles and about 100 attack drones launched overnight. All this whilst President Zelensky's been trying to concentrate minds at home on the advances his troops have been making over the border into Russia's Kursk region as a morale boost to mark the weekend celebrations for Independence Day. At least 4 people have been killed. Well, just before the show, I caught up with the Ukrainian MP Lesia Vasylenko, who's in Kyiv, and I began by asking her the extent of the damage following the strikes.
I think it's early to say about that, but definitely the damage will be assessed. Through the day, the damage was assessed in other regions of Ukraine as well, because 15 regions of Ukraine were hit and there are casualties. There were people killed, there were people wounded, and some critical infrastructure objects were damaged. We know that Russia today is targeting our power infrastructure with the goal to leave Ukraine cold and dark for winter time.
Was there a part of you, Lesia, that was braced for this? Do you think this is Vladimir Putin's response to the incursion into Kursk?
I think this is Vladimir Putin's response to the fact that he just wants to destroy Ukraine. He was on this track even before Ukraine crossed over into Kursk. You know, this is his general line of fighting this war, targeting civilians, targeting civilian infrastructure. Nothing really changed.
And yet it's also a sign of his weakness, is it not? Because throughout the war, he's issued these red lines, including threatening the use of tactical nuclear weapons. And we don't want to be complacent about his potential use of those. But so far, those red lines that he's issued appear to just be a bluff.
A lot of what Putin does is a bluff, but what is definitely not a bluff is him going as far as killing innocent children, women, civilians all across Ukraine, and not minding whether he's hitting military targets or he's hitting civilian targets. And it seems that the civilian objects like the infrastructure, power infrastructure, civilian infrastructure like hospitals, schools, kindergartens, that seems to be the main targets of Putin's army today.
Lisa, I just wonder, as a human being, as a mum living in Kyiv, you shouldn't have to get used to this, but obviously it has become part and parcel of life in the Ukrainian capital over recent years. How do you cope with that?
We cope, but I guess really badly. I think that there will be a lot of long-term consequences for mental health in Ukraine. At the moment, all we can do is deal with the short-term consequences. So when the attack happens and when explosions are heard outside the window, all I can say to my kids is that it's okay, it's all right. Like any mom, like any human being in a danger situation when you can't do anything, you just need to calm your kids down. So you say it's okay, when really the thought racing in your mind is that really it's not okay. And by looking at your own children, you see that their bodies, they tense up with all the fear and all the anxiety, and their bodies are sending them the signal that it's not okay. And then there's mom saying that it's okay. So there's clearly a discrepancy there between what's going on in the brain and what's going on in the body. And I think this is part of the mental health issues that my children, like all the children in Ukraine, will have to deal with in the years to come.
How old are your kids, out of interest?
10, 9, and 3.
And how much do they understand about what is happening with the war?
All 3 of them were already born into the war. So the war started in 2014, and it started with the Maidan protests in 2013. This is when my oldest son was born, and then the rest of them were just born into different periods into the war. So they know well enough that they have had not a single day of their lives in peaceful Ukraine. They don't know what it is like to live in peaceful Ukraine without some kind of news of war coming in, without some kind of sounds of war being heard in the background. This is the reality of the Ukrainian kids today.
Well, we all hope that the day when they don't have to contend with the war comes very soon. Just on that note, Lesia, finally, are you optimistic? Are you more optimistic now than you were maybe a month or so ago? It strikes me that the incursion into Kursk and Russia's very slow, confused response has transformed the morale of Ukrainian troops and potentially the Ukrainian people as well. How are you feeling at the moment about the way the war is going?
The war is going. There's many losses at the front lines from Ukrainian side and from the Russian side as well. We are confident here in more or less, I can't even call it peaceful Ukraine, but at least in the Ukraine where there is no battlefield on the ground, that our men and women on the front lines are doing all they can to make sure the Russian aggression doesn't spread more. And it is our duty also to stay put and stay strong and stay resilient, not to give in to fears and anxieties, and just to believe that peace will come, and peace will come in the form of victory for Ukraine and the return of Ukrainian people and Ukrainian territories under the Ukrainian flag. This is our belief. This is what keeps us going.